Chidi grew up in the slums of Ajegunle, Lagos, where poverty clung to your skin like the humid air. His father was a drunk who disappeared when he was 7, and his mother sold boiled groundnuts by the roadside until her hands became permanently stained brown. Every morning, Chidi would watch wealthy men drive past in their gleaming cars, their wives dressed in expensive lace and gold jewelry, and he would swear on everything holy that one day he would have that life. He worked 3 jobs while putting himself through university, washing cars at dawn, serving as a waiter at afternoon parties, and working security at night. The other students mocked his worn shoes and second-hand clothes, but Chidi studied harder than any of them. When he graduated with first-class honors in business administration, he didn't celebrate. He just looked at his certificate and thought, "This is my ticket out." Within 5 years, through ruthless ambition and connections he built by serving the right people, Chidi had clawed his way into middle management at a multinational oil company. He bought his mother a house in a decent neighborhood, traded his Okada for a Toyota Camry, and started wearing the kind of clothes he once envied. But inside, he still felt like that hungry boy from Ajegunle, the one who didn't belong anywhere near success. He avoided class reunions because he feared they would see through him, see that he was still just pretending. Then one Saturday at a wedding, he saw her across the hall, Amara. She was the bride's cousin, laughing with her friends, her skin glowing like polished mahogany, her body curved in ways that made his mouth go dry. She wore a green aso-ebi with gold accessories, and when she smiled, it was like the sun had decided to shine just for her. Chidi knew immediately that he wanted her, needed her, because having a woman like that would prove to everyone and to himself that he had finally made it. Chidi pursued Amara like a military campaign. He found out through the bride that she worked as a pharmacist at a private hospital in Victoria Island, that she came from a comfortable middle-class family in Enugu, and that she was 26 and single. He showed up at her workplace with flowers, waited for her after her shifts, and bombarded her phone with messages that walked the line between romantic and obsessive. Amara was flattered at first. Chidi was handsome in a rough-edged way, ambitious, and he seemed to worship the ground she walked on. Her friends warned her that he was moving too fast, that there was something intense about him that felt off. But Amara had just ended a relationship with a man who barely noticed she existed, and Chidi's attention felt like drinking cold water after crossing a desert. Within 3 months, he proposed with a ring that cost more than he could afford, and she said yes, because everyone told her she was lucky to find a man who loved her so much. The wedding was elaborate. Chidi insisted on it, even though it put him in debt. He wanted everyone who had ever looked down on him to see that he could marry a woman like Amara, a woman with smooth skin and proper English, and a family that never knew hunger. On their wedding night, as Amara undressed in their hotel suite, Chidi felt a strange panic grip his chest. She was so beautiful, so perfect, and now she was his. But what if she realized she had made a mistake? What if she woke up one day and saw him for what he really was, a pretender, a fraud, a boy from the gutter who had no business touching someone like her? He made love to her with a desperation that surprised them both. And afterward, as she slept peacefully beside him, Chidi lay awake staring at the ceiling, already afraid of losing what he had just gained. It was that night that the first seed of his sickness took root in his mind. If something this good could be his, then surely it could be taken away. The first time Chidi inspected Amara was 2 months into their marriage. She came home from work an hour later than usual, explaining that there had been an emergency at the hospital. A patient had gone into anaphylactic shock, and all hands were needed. Chidi smiled and nodded, but as soon as she went to shower, something dark and invasive crawled into his thoughts. What if she wasn't at work? What if she was with someone else? He waited until she was asleep, then went through her phone, reading every message, checking every call log, examining every photo. He found nothing suspicious, but instead of relief, he felt an addictive rush. The next week, He started coming home early to smell her clothes, to check if her underwear seemed different, to ask seemingly casual questions about everyone she had spoken to that day. Amara thought it was sweet at first her husband was so interested in her life. But soon the questions became interrogations. Who is this Tunde that keeps calling you? Why did you laugh so much when talking to the delivery man? That dress is too tight. What are you trying to prove? Amara would explain patiently, confused by his sudden paranoia, but Chidi had perfected the art of making his accusations sound like concern. He would apologize afterward, blame it on stress at work, make love to her with that same desperate intensity, and she would forgive him because she believed marriage required patience. What Amara didn't know was that while Chidi was building a prison around her with his suspicions, he was living a completely different life outside their home. There was Jennifer, his secretary, whom he was sleeping with in his office during lunch breaks. There was Ngozi, a runs girl he kept in a one-bedroom apartment in Lekki. There was even Patience, his mother's neighbor, whom he would visit and sleep with under the pretense of checking on his mother. Chidi's logic was simple and sick. If he assumed Amara was cheating, then his own cheating was just fair. By their first anniversary, Chidi was sleeping with 5 different women regularly, and none of them knew about each other or about Amara. He had become a master of compartmentalization. Monday afternoons were for Jennifer in his office. Wednesday evenings were for Ngozi after he claimed to have late meetings. Weekends, when Amara visited her family, were for the others. He told himself he loved Amara, that she was different, that she was his wife, and therefore special. The other women were just outlets, proof that he was still the man who could have whatever he wanted. But the more women he conquered, the more paranoid he became about Amara. It was as if his own guilt convinced him that everyone was as duplicitous as he was. He installed a tracking app on her phone without her knowledge. He befriended her colleagues to spy on her. He even hired a private investigator for 2 weeks to follow her, hoping to catch her doing anything that would justify his madness. The investigator's report came back clean. Your wife goes to work, goes home, visits her parents on Sundays, and occasionally has lunch with her sister. She is faithful. Chidi paid the man and burned the report, furious at finding nothing. That same evening, he came home to find Amara cooking his favorite soup ofensala and humming softly to herself. She looked so content, so trusting, and something in Chidi's chest twisted painfully. He walked up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and she leaned back into him with a happy sigh. I love you, she murmured. I'm so lucky to have you. Chidi felt tears prick his eyes because he knew he didn't deserve this woman, knew that he was destroying something precious with his own hands, but he couldn't stop. Later that night, while Amara slept beside him, he texted Ngozi to confirm their Thursday appointment. The sickness in him was too deep now, too tangled with his insecurity and self-hatred to cut out. It took Amara almost 2 years to realize something was wrong, and when she did, it wasn't because she caught Chidi cheating, it was because she caught herself becoming smaller. She used to be confident, outspoken, quick to laugh. Now she found herself second-guessing every word, every outfit, every smile she gave to strangers. She had stopped wearing her favorite clothes because Chidi said they attracted too much attention. She had dropped 3 friends because Chidi said they were bad influences. She had even changed her route home from work because Chidi said the old one took her past too many dangerous areas where men might harass her. One evening, her younger sister Chisom visited and watched in horror as Amara jumped nervously when her phone rang. Then spent 10 minutes explaining to Chidi exactly what the pharmacist from the day shift had said to her about medication inventory. After Chidi left for his business dinner, Chisom grabbed Amara's hands across the table. Sister, what is happening to you? Chisom demanded, her eyes filled with tears. Do you hear yourself? You're reporting your day like a criminal giving a statement. This is not love, this is prison. Amara's first instinct was to defend Chidi, to explain that he just cared about her, that marriage required compromise. But as she opened her mouth, the words died in her throat, and for the first time in 2 years, she actually listened to what was happening in her own life. She realized she couldn't remember the last time she had made a decision without considering how Chidi would react. She realized she had stopped dreaming about getting her master's degree because Chidi said it would take time away from their marriage. She realized she was exhausted from the constant performance of being monitored. That night, after Chisom left, Amara sat in her bedroom and cried not sad tears, but angry ones. She had allowed herself to become a shadow, and she didn't even know when it had happened. What she didn't know was that Chidi's business dinner was actually him in a hotel room with a new girl named Bisola, a 23-year-old undergraduate who believed every lie he told about being separated from his wife. The confrontation came on a Tuesday evening. Amara had spent the day building up her courage, rehearsing what she would say. When Chidi came home, she was waiting in the living room, her back straight, her face calm. "We need to talk," she said, and something in her voice made Chidi's instincts flare with alarm. He sat down carefully, already preparing his defenses. Amara took a breath and said, "I want you to delete that tracking app from my phone. I want you to stop interrogating me every day. I want my life back, Chidi. This marriage is suffocating me." For a moment, Chidi just stared at her, his mind racing. How did she know about the app? Who had she been talking to? Was she finally revealing her true intentions? His paranoia roared to life, drowning out any possibility of rational thought. "So that's it." Chidi's voice was cold. "You want freedom so you can do what? Run around with other men? Is there someone else, Amara? Just tell me the truth." Amara felt something inside her break. "There's no one else," she shouted, her voice cracking. "There has never been anyone else. I wake up every day, and I prove my loyalty to you in 1,000 ways, and you still don't believe me. What kind of man treats his wife like a criminal? What kind of love is this?" Chidi stood up, his hands shaking. He wanted to confess everything the other women, his own guilt, the way his insecurity had poisoned everything good between them. But instead, he did what he always did. He turned his guilt into rage. "You don't know what I've sacrificed for you," he hissed. "I came from nothing, and I built this life for us. All I ask is that you be faithful, and you can't even give me peace of mind." The words hung in the air like poison. Amara looked at her husband, really looked at him, and saw a stranger, a broken, paranoid stranger who had been slowly breaking her too. She walked to their bedroom, locked the door, and that night, Chidi slept on the couch, his mind spinning with panic that he was losing control. After that fight, something shifted. Amara stopped explaining herself. She would come home, greet Chidi politely, and retreat into silence. She changed her phone password, and when Chidi demanded she share it, she simply said no. The word shocked him. Amara had never refused him anything before. He tried to re-establish control through other means: surprise visits to her workplace, calls to her colleagues pretending to be worried, checking her car's mileage. But Amara had built a wall around herself now, and his inspections bounced off it harmlessly. Desperate to feel powerful again, Chidi threw himself into his affairs with renewed energy. He added 2 more women to his rotation and started taking riskier chances. He brought Ngozi to a restaurant only 5 kilometers from his house. He had sex with Jennifer in his car parked at a public lot. Some part of him wanted to be caught, wanted Amara to see him with someone else so he could say, "See, I was right to watch you, everyone cheats." But karma, as it always does, was planning a different lesson. It started with a simple fever. Chidi developed a high temperature and a persistent cough, but he ignored it. He was too busy managing his multiple lives to worry about a minor illness. Then came the rash on his groin, painful urination, and sores that wouldn't heal. Finally, terrified, he went to a private clinic where the doctor examined him with a grim expression. "Mr. Chidi, You have multiple sexually transmitted infections, gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis. We need to run more tests. Have you been engaging in unprotected sex with multiple partners? The room spun around Chidi. His first thought wasn't shame or fear, it was horror that Amara might find out. The doctor gave him medication and a stern lecture about protecting his wife, and Chidi left the clinic feeling like a dead man walking. He had been so careful, he thought. He always used protection, except sometimes when he was drunk, or when the woman promised she was clean, or when he was too excited to care. His sickness, both physical and mental, had finally manifested in his flesh. Chidi stood in the pharmacy, staring at the bag of antibiotics in his hand. The doctor had been clear. You must inform your wife immediately so she can get tested and treated. These infections can cause infertility and serious complications if left untreated in women. But telling Amara meant confessing everything, all the women, all the lies, all the ways he had betrayed her while accusing her of the same. Chidi's cowardice won. He decided he would treat himself silently and simply avoid sleeping with Amara until he was clean. He would make excuses, stress, work pressure, fatigue. Then, once he was cured, he would be better, he would stop cheating, and she would never have to know. But life, as Amara's grandmother used to say, has a way of exposing secrets buried in darkness. 2 weeks into Chidi's treatment, Amara started experiencing strange symptoms: painful urination, unusual discharge, pelvic pain. She tried to ignore it, but when it got worse, she went to her hospital for a confidential checkup. The doctor, an older woman who had known Amara for years, ran the tests and delivered the results with barely concealed anger. Amara, you have chlamydia and gonorrhea. These are sexually transmitted infections. Has your husband been complaining of any symptoms? The words hit Amara like a physical blow. She sat in that office, trembling, as her entire marriage crystallized into sharp, painful clarity. All of Chidi's accusations, all his paranoia, all his obsessive monitoring it, had all been projection. He had been cheating on her, probably for their entire marriage, and his guilt had made him suspicious of her innocence. The doctor touched her hand gently. I'm so sorry, my dear. Let's start treatment immediately. And Amara, you need to decide what happens next. Amara came home that evening with a strange calm. She had cried all her tears in the hospital parking lot. Now she felt cold, clear, like ice. Chidi was watching television when she entered, and he looked up with his usual false warmth. Baby, you're home. How was work? Amara set her handbag down carefully and looked at her husband, really looked at him. She sat down across from him and said in a voice like steel, I went to the hospital today. I've been infected with gonorrhea and chlamydia, sexually transmitted infections, Chidi, from you. The color drained from Chidi's face. He opened his mouth, but Amara held up her hand. Don't insult me with lies. I know everything now. All those times you accused me of cheating, you were the one sleeping around. All those inspections, those tracking apps, those interrogations, they were just you projecting your own guilt onto me. You made me feel like a criminal when you were the one committing crimes against our marriage. Her voice was shaking now, not with tears but with rage. How many women, Chidi, how many times did you come home to me after being inside someone else? How many times did you accuse me of something you were actively doing? Chidi's mind scrambled for a defense, an excuse, anything. Amara, I can explain. Explain what? Amara's voice cracked like thunder. Explain how you risked my health. Explain how you could have made me infertile. Explain how you made me doubt my own sanity while you were living like a dog in the streets. There is no explanation that makes this okay. Chidi dropped to his knees, literally fell to the floor like a man begging for his life. I'm sorry, he sobbed, and for once, the tears were real. I'm sick, Amara. Something is wrong with me. I came from nothing, and when I got you, I was so afraid you would leave me, so afraid I wasn't good enough that you what? Amara's voice was ice. That you sabotaged everything? That you destroyed the one person who actually loved you? That you proved every bad thing you believed about yourself was true? She stood up, looking down at this man she had married, and felt nothing but pity and disgust. I was faithful, Chidi. Through everything you put me through, I never once looked at another man. I could have, God knows I had opportunities, men who would have treated me like a queen instead of a suspect. But I honored our vows. And you repaid my loyalty with betrayal and disease. Chidi reached for her leg. Desperate, pathetic. Please, please, I'll change. I'll go to therapy. I'll do anything. Amara stepped back from his touch like he was contaminated, which, she thought bitterly, he was. I'm leaving. I'm going to stay with my sister. Don't call me. Don't come looking for me. The weeks after Amara left were hell for Chidi. She filed for a legal separation and moved in with Chisom. She blocked his number after he called 40 times in one day. She refused to see him when he showed up at her hospital, forcing security to escort him away. For the first time in his life, Chidi couldn't manipulate, couldn't control, couldn't sweet-talk his way out of consequences. He spiraled. He stopped going to work, stopped returning his mother's calls, stopped pretending he was fine. His affairs, once exciting, now disgusted him. When Jennifer tried to visit, he screamed at her to leave. When Gozi called asking for money, he told her he never wanted to see her again. He fired his secretary and changed his number, trying to cut out every reminder of his sickness. His mother, sensing something was terribly wrong, showed up at his house and forced her way inside. She found him unshaven, surrounded by empty bottles, and looking like a ghost. Chidi, what happened? Where is your wife? His mother's voice was sharp with worry. He confessed everything, the cheating, the paranoia, the infections, the way he had destroyed his marriage with his own hands. His mother listened in stunned silence, and when he finished, she did something he didn't expect. She slapped him, hard. You foolish boy, she hissed, tears running down her face. I didn't raise you to be this kind of man. Your father was a cheat and a drunk, and I thought you would be different. But you became exactly what you hated. Her words cut deeper than any of Amara's had, because they were true. Chidi had spent his whole life running from his father's shadow, only to step right into it. His mother stood up, her face hard. You want to be a man? Then stop crying and fix this. Get help for whatever sickness is in your mind. Beg that woman's forgiveness, and if she leaves you anyway, accept it like a man. You did this to yourself, Chidi. Now you live with it. Chidi checked himself into therapy, real therapy, with a psychologist who specialized in obsessive-compulsive behaviors and relationship trauma. It was humiliating at first, sitting in that office, admitting that he had needed to control Amara because he felt worthless inside. The therapist, Dr. Okoro, was patient but firm. Your poverty wasn't your fault, Chidi, but what you did to cope with the shame of it, that's on you. You used Amara as proof of your worth, like a trophy you needed to guard. And when that wasn't enough, you proved your power by conquering other women. You were trying to fill a hole in yourself that can only be filled by you. The sessions were brutal. Chidi had to confront every ugly truth about himself, that he had never believed he deserved good things, so he destroyed them before they could destroy him. That his mother's sacrifices had created a debt of worth in him that no achievement could pay. That his father's abandonment had taught him that men take what they want and leave before they're left. Meanwhile, Amara was doing her own work. She had started therapy too, processing the trauma of being controlled and betrayed. She had also started rediscovering herself, the woman she was, before Chidi had convinced her to shrink. She enrolled in the master's program she had abandoned. She bought new clothes in bold colors. She went out with her friends and laughed without guilt. And slowly, Painfully, she began to heal from the infection Chidi had given her, both the physical one and the emotional one. Her sister Chisom watched her bloom again and said, "You know, you don't have to go back to him. Even if he's in therapy, even if he's changed, you don't owe him forgiveness." Amara knew this was true. But part of her, a small, stubborn part, wanted to see if the man she had married still existed under all the sickness, or if he had always been a mirage. After 3 months of silence, she agreed to meet Chidi in a neutral location, a small cafe, public, with her sister waiting in a car outside. Chidi arrived early, his hands shaking as he waited. When Amara walked in, she looked different, stronger, more vibrant, like a woman who had remembered her own power. She sat down across from him, and for a long moment, they just looked at each other. Chidi had rehearsed a speech with Dr. Okoro, but now all the words fled his mind. Finally, he just said, "Thank you for coming. I know I don't deserve it." Amara's face was neutral. "You're right, you don't, so why am I here?" Chidi took a deep breath. "I've been in therapy for 3 months. I've learned things about myself that explain what I did, but don't excuse it. I gave you diseases, Amara. I risked your health, your fertility, your life, because I was too much of a coward to face my own demons. There is no apology big enough for that. There is no way to undo what I did." Amara's eyes were dry, but her voice was soft. "You're right, there isn't." She leaned forward, and her next words were the most important thing she had ever said to him. "Chidi, I loved you. I loved the man I thought you were: ambitious, passionate, devoted, but that man was a lie. You were never devoted to me. You were obsessed with owning me, with using me to prove something to yourself. That's not love, that's sickness. I'm glad you're in therapy. I'm glad you're facing your demons, but your healing is for you, not for me. I don't forgive you, Chidi. Maybe someday I will, but not today. What you did to me, the monitoring, the accusations, the betrayal, the infections, you stole 2 years of my life and almost my future. I was starting to plan for children. Did you know that? I was imagining our family, and all the while, you were infecting me with diseases from your..." Her voice cracked then, the first show of emotion. "You made me doubt myself. You made me small. And the worst part is I let you." She stood up, preparing to leave. "I'm divorcing you. The papers will be ready next month. You'll get them through your lawyer. We had no children, thank God, so it will be clean." 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Amara stood outside the courthouse, free, and for the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe fully. Chisom picked her up, and they went to their parents' house, where their mother had cooked a feast, not a celebration of divorce, but a celebration of Amara's return to herself. She had aced her first semester of her master's program. She had been promoted to senior pharmacist. She had even started dating cautiously, a kind accountant named Emeka, who thought her opinions were interesting and never once asked to check her phone. She was building a new life, brick by brick, and this time she was building it for herself. Chidi, for his part, stayed in therapy. He worked on himself with the kind of obsessive focus he had once used to destroy Amara. He understood now that he might always carry this sickness, this insecurity, born from poverty and abandonment, but he was learning to manage it, to recognize when the paranoid thoughts started, and to challenge them before they became actions. He dated no one, doctor. Okoro had been firm that he needed to be alone, to learn to find worth in himself before seeking it in others. He had been promoted at work, but success felt hollow now, without someone to share it with. Sometimes, late at night, he would look at old photos of Amara and think about the woman he had broken, and the shame would hit him so hard he couldn't breathe. His mother told him that was good. Shame means you understand. Now use that understanding to be better. So Chidi tried. He volunteered at a shelter for domestic violence survivors, helping people escape the kind of control he had once inflicted. He sponsored young men from Ajegunle through university, hoping to break the cycle of poverty that had broken him. He would never get Amara back, he knew that, accepted it, mourned it. But maybe, if he spent the rest of his life being the man he should have been, he could balance the scales just a little. The inspector had finally learned that the only person who needed inspection was himself, and that some things, once broken by paranoia and betrayal, could never be made whole again. But from the pieces, both he and Amara were building something new, and this time, they were building it right.